I recently had the opportunity to talk to Stephen Muray, one of the senior game designers over at Paradox Development Studios, and specifically on Stellaris. And I kind of wanted to touch on the stuff that we talked about in the past, specifically the economy update in 3.0 and the successive patches that dropped, and whether or not the team is happy with what the results are. This should be interesting. Let's see what Stephen had to say. So, Stephen, last time we spoke, at least on the channel, we spoke extensively about the new economy systems that at the time were pending, specifically the industrial districts, some of the transfer hubs and stuff like that. That was, I believe, almost a couple months ago at this point. The 3.0 expansion has dropped. Nemesis obviously coming out in parallel as well. Since then, we've had 3 patches to patch things up. Since then, have you had any big revelations regarding the original system and felt that, okay, this does not work specifically because XYZ?
Yeah, there were some of those. Some things became much more apparent when we had more people playing through it, and also the feedback from the community and fans. One of the things that I felt didn't work so well, and we changed in 3.03, was the additional jobs from the industrial buildings, those focus buildings. I really loved the system where we had them adding to the industrial districts directly, but with the pop growth changes, there weren't sufficient pops, really. Like, just legitimately, you didn't have enough pops to fill up these planets, and you would upgrade this building and suddenly you'd have 13 unemployment, or not, you'd have 13 empty jobs as opposed to unemployment or anything like that. So we changed that over to a production bonus. It's not quite as satisfying, I think, in some ways, but it still sort of gets that specialization on the planet. You can build both of them now because you're still pop limited. With the old system, we were thinking that we didn't want to add too many jobs to a single district, because if you could build both the industrial and consumer good, or the alloy and consumer goods focused jobs to the industrial districts, you'd build one district and suddenly get 6 more jobs. And that, unless you're on a Cuminopolis or something like that, that's too much. With the increased production, however, I didn't feel that we needed to restrict that anymore. Otherwise, I think that things went pretty well in general. There was obviously some discussion about pop growth and stuff like that. I think we hit a pretty good middle ground after 3.03. So I'll continue watching this, and we'll see what we end up doing.
Yeah, I noticed that you guys there was some internal discussion. Well, not so much internal discussion. There was some community debate regarding adding the pop growth slider, even before it was announced whether or not the team should actually do it, rather than building something that would be applicable to every single user, which is of course not necessarily always the case due to the difference in setups, etc. How obvious of a decision, or how much of a discussion was there internally regarding the pop growth slider being added to the game? Because in the end, it kind of shifts the, I don't want to say blame, but let's say that you are a user and the end game is slowing down because you have a bazillion pops in your galaxy, and the argument is no longer the development, or at least the pop growth within the game, is wrong. No, the slider, you set the slider to the wrong position. Was any discussion like that internally?
Yeah, we did actually have discussions about that, including that specific issue, because while yes, it's true, I'm not planning on balancing around having all the sliders set down to the minimum, and it will cause some economic issues, because we increased production significantly in 3.0. So if you crank everything back all the way down to have 1 million pops, yeah, the balance will be a little bit off, or a lot of bit off, actually. But the thing is, when we originally did these systems, we very intentionally put all of the variables into defines so players could mod them easily, because we figured it was something that they would want to be able to touch, they would want to be able to change. Adding the sliders, I felt, was just sort of a way of making that easier. Like, we were letting you do this anyway, so I mean, is it giving official support to that? I guess. We're not done with the system. We're going to continue looking at it and continue making changes, rather than making everyone wait for whatever changes I decide for the future, or the team decides on in the future. I felt that it was really a good idea to just give people the freedom to do what they want here, and we'll revisit it again later. I know that may seem like a bit of a cop-out, because, like you say, I'm making the players decide what is right for them. But the game is meant to be fun. I want you to have fun the way you want to have fun, and I don't want to dictate what kind of game you're playing, you know?
No, that makes perfect sense, especially within the scope of everything. Was there any consideration about performance notifications that are automatic based on profiling the user PC? I don't know whether or not there's any systems within Clausewitz at the moment that basically effectively scans your system and then makes an assessment on whether or not this is a good idea or not.
We didn't specifically look into those. We discussed it very briefly, but since I was trying to get this in as quickly as I could for the 303 patch, so people could start playing with it, we figured that just adding the warning to the tooltip on the slider was sufficient. But there was also some discussion of, well, if you crank things too low, should this disable achievements or anything like that? But we decided to err on the side of, no, just do what you want to, have that freedom.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so then let's quickly move over to the population transit mechanics, and specifically around the addition of slavery transit through the, I believe the system, what's the building even called at this point?
Slave processing.
The slave processing plant, there you go. At what point did you guys realize, we forgot about the prisoners with jobs and they should probably be able to move as well?
Well, it wasn't really forgot. We figured that, okay, those don't have influence costs, and you can just move them yourself, except really this, and we decided to add it as basically a quality of life thing. The building, admittedly, isn't a super awesome building. It's better now that it allows auto-resettlement of your slaves. But we were trying to look at it from the fiction side of, if you are the owner of these slaves or enslaved robots or whatnot, you don't want people picking them up and moving them to a different planet without your explicit approval. So we sort of viewed it as a free-willed, free pops would be moving about of their own volition, whereas other ones you would have to actually go in and move them yourself.
Like the balance between indentured and chattel, basically.
Yeah, kind of. But really, this is just one that we're like, you know what? Maybe we need to back off of that fiction a little bit, because if fiction is getting in the way of certain things, then it sometimes has to go. Mm-hmm. And with the requiring the slave processing plant, on the other hand, also satisfied that fiction to a degree. So it was sort of like the happy medium between the two.
Okay, and how does this extend to how does that extend to the current robot setup? Because unless a robot is sentient, it is a synthetoid or synthetic robot, there is no auto-relocation at the moment, unless that has changed since then.
Right now, I believe that we have the same sort of rule of, if it is a sentient free will or sentient and free pop, then it can move anywhere it wants. If it is enslaved or shackled, in the case of the synthetics, then it will be forced to stay put. I don't remember if droids will move if shackled. I believe they will if there's a slave processing plant now, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to go check that.
Okay, but there's nothing planned to add something like redistributing robots automatically based upon their requirements empire-wide.
It might be nice in some way, because right now there's the problem of the slave processing hub requires authoritarian ethics. So a non-author, actually, does it? There are situations where you can have shackled robots, but not have access to the processing hub, which isn't perfect. But I didn't want to add a new building explicitly for this. We'll find some sort of solution for that in the future.
Yeah, something like an edict or something like that, or a policy.
Exactly.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. So with 3.3 out of the door, or 3.0.3, there was some discussion online and also between myself and some other people regarding the tooltips and the generalized messaging around the new systems, as well as visibility and basically lampposting on how everything actually worked and how everything has been communicated to the user. And especially with something as big as a 3.0 update and this being pretty much paraded around everywhere. How come that it generally wasn't particularly clear on how planetary capacity worked in a single unified location rather than being relatively scattered all over the place?
To be honest, I was hoping that people wouldn't worry too much about it because the bonuses you get from the logistic growth system are actually pretty significant. But a lot of times, if you're just kind of playing the game and not focusing exclusively on it, it kind of just works out from my experiences playing. It won't be optimal though, and I know that people are often extremely interested in optimizing their gameplay, and we probably should have gone back and made a bunch of these tooltips clearer and shifted around where some things are in the planetary view. It's possible that it's likely that we'll be revisiting that in some way in the future, because right now it is not clear enough.
With 3.0, 3.0.3 out of the door right now, can we expect a 3.0.4? What's the initial, what's the wrap up here? You guys looking to go on vacation sometime in the future? Because obviously it's been semi-wrapped up right now and it's time to let it stir for a little bit. Or what are the upcoming things that the team is going to be working on that you can talk about?
Let's see. Barring any significant things coming up, we believe that 3.03 will be the last patch in this cycle. We'll be talking more about what we're planning on doing actually in next week's Dev Diary, I believe. As for the summer, the Swedish sun is high in the sky, and yeah. So, summer is coming. No, we're currently working. We're making plans for the future, and we'll start talking about them next week, I think.
It's always great to hear from the team when it comes to the development cycle of the game, and I do feel that they kind of want to get out of their shell and talk to us more, which in general I think is a good thing. I think this is potentially a good stepping stone to the future. If you are interested in hearing more from Stephen or even Daniel Mortegård or somebody else on the team, let me know down in the comments below whether or not you want to hear more from the production floor of the Stellaris team, whether or not it's the core team or the custodians. Who knows? I can go and reach out and see if they have any questions. And of course, if you have any of those, feel free to leave them down below as well. I want to thank my patrons for making this video possible, as well as Stephen for coming out and taking the time to talk with me. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, micro quasars eat other stars.